Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. Like Lori mentioned, this will cover the National Transit Database 2023 reporting system updates. This is a quick disclaimer. The contents of this presentation do not have the force and effect of law and are not meant to bind the public in any way. The presentation is intended only to provide clarity to the public regarding existing requirements under the law or agency policies. Grantees and subgrantees should refer to FTA statutes and regulations for applicable National Transit Database requirements. The goal of today's webinar is to review the system changes to the NTD reporting system that will be effective for report year 2023, including new forms, new requirements, and form enhancements. Today, we will start by reviewing the forms for report year 2023, which will include the P50 General Transit Feed Specification Form, the B15 Geographic Area Coverage Form for demand response modes, the SNS 60 Safety Data Form for reduced rural and asset reporter, and the WE20 Weekly Reference Reporting Form. Then we'll move on to the second part of our presentation, which will cover any new fields for report year 2023 and a couple of form enhancements. For these particular items, we will cover specifically a new field for rural and asset reporters for fuel type on the A30 form, an enhancement on the A30 form for average lifetime miles calculations, a constraint on the A90 performance measure targets form, a new latitude and longitude search on the A15 facilities inventory form, and lastly, we will cover a new field on the P10 form for emergency contact information. Here is the contact information for the FTA IT Help Desk, and this is who you can contact for any technical issues or technical assistance needs for the NTD reporting system. And then we have the contact information for the NTD Help Desk if you need any non-technical assistance, or if you need any help contacting your analyst, or if you're unsure who that is, you can always contact that NTD help at dot.gov. Today, I'm joined by Lillian Pecoraro. She's a senior analyst and IT coordinator for the NTD team. And my name is Melissa Conti, and I'm the Deputy Project Manager for the NTD team. Here's the contact information for the NTD Program Manager, Chelsea Champlin, and also for Tom Coleman, who's the previous NTD Program Manager and is now the Division Chief of Analysis at FTA's Office of Budget and Policy. So if you have any questions, you can feel free to contact Lillian or I, or always your assigned NTD analyst as well. Before we get started, I just wanted to review a couple of relevant resource links here. So I would encourage you to review these if you need any additional assistance. The first is a link to the NTD Federal Register Notice page. So this has all relevant Federal Register Notice links related to NTD reporting. So the most recent Federal Register Notice links would be on there and are relevant to today's presentation. We also have a new manual for monthly ridership and weekly reference reporting that you can find on our website. The full reporting and reduced reporting policy manuals should be published soon before the reporting year starts, probably about mid to late September. I'd also encourage you to review the NTD trainings and conference page to see if there are any upcoming webinars or courses held through NTI that are specific to your reporter type. All of the forms and new requirements we cover in today's webinar will also be covered in those trainings. The last item I wanted to mention was an FAQ page for new requirements and developments. So a lot of hot topic items related to today's presentation. There are some frequently asked questions on our website. And if you have any suggestions for frequently asked questions, we always are looking for updates to that page as well. So I encourage you to take a peek at those. And then we'll move on to the rest of the presentation. So as a reminder for report year 2023, here are the deadlines and due dates based on your agency's fiscal year. So these are the same as previous years. Our agencies with June 30th fiscal year end dates will have their reports due on October 31st. September 30th fiscal year end dates will have a due date of January 31st. And at agencies with a calendar year fiscal year end would submit their reports no later than April 30th of 2024. The report year, like I said, should launch sometime mid to late September. Once the forms are available in the reporting system for your reporting group, your NTD analyst will send welcome information to let you know that the forms are available for data entry. And then just a quick reminder to our full reporters, report year 2023 is a mandatory sampling year for passenger miles traveled if your agency samples triennially. So just a quick reminder there, if you have any questions about that, you can always contact your NTD analyst. Okay, so the first section will be covering all of the new forms for report year 2023. We're going to start off with the P50 General Transit Feed Specification Form. So all agencies with fixed route modes will be required to submit GTFS links to the NTD beginning in report year 2023. For each fixed route mode and type of service, agencies will submit a GTFS link through the P50 form. This applies to urban reporters, both full and reduced, rural reporters, including our rural general public transit subrecipients, and our tribal reporters. This requirement does not apply to reduced asset reporters or asset subrecipients. The P50 form will be accessible via your agency's NTD profile in the reporting system. So now we're going to cover how to access the P50 form and then review how to enter your GTFS links into the form. So first, you'd log into the NTD reporting system, and on the home page, you would select the Profile tab. Once you select the Profile tab, you'll then click on the Related Actions link on your agency's profile page, and the P50 General Transit Feed Specification Form will appear with the rest of your P or Profile forms here. So many of you may already be familiar with your basic information form, modes, users, reportable segments, if you have any, but the P50 will be under the same section. Once you click on View and Manage General Transit Feed Specification, you will see this interface here in order to add your appropriate web links. So to get started, you would enter your 5-digit NTD ID into the organization field. Next, you're going to select the mode for the specific link you're entering from the drop-down menu. Then you'll select the type of service from the drop-down menu. These options for mode and type of service will populate based on your agency's modes from the P20 form. If the web link you're uploading represents multiple types of service, for example, if you operate motor bus purchase transportation and motor bus directly operated, if the link you're uploading represents both types of service, you can select multiple types of service for one link. Each individual mode should have its own link, but if you have multiple types of service for the same mode, you may select multiple if the link you are uploading represents both. Next, you'll enter the web link for your GTFS feed. If your agency is unable to host a link for any reason, you may upload a zip file in this interface with your GTFS data. So upon uploading the file, you will be required to explain why your agency is unable to host the link at the time of submission. So your analyst will review that if for some reason you're not able to host a link. If you have multiple fixed route modes or multiple links that you need to submit, you can use the Add Web Link button over on the left to add multiple entries to this table on the P50. So you can enter one at a time and click submit, or if you'd like to enter all of your links at once and then click submit, you can go about that however you choose. So once you are done with your data entry, you'll click submit. And then on the bottom of the P50 form, you will see another table where you can see any existing links that you have added to this form. So as you add links, they will populate in the View Existing Links table below. This table will show the details about the link, which user created the link entry, and when it was created originally, and also when it was last updated. You need to edit any existing web links. You can do so by clicking the ID value on the left side of the View Existing Links table. This will load a summary of the link that you submitted, and from here you can select the Edit Web Link button, and that will take you to a page where you can see the summary of the link that you submitted. And then you can go ahead and edit any of the desired fields. If you need to update the mode, the link itself at any point in time, you can do so through this Edit Web Link function. And once you're done editing the link or the details about the link, you can click Submit to save your changes. You can also use the Deactivate Web Link button if you ever need to deactivate a link. There's also a GTFS dashboard page in the NTD. You can access this up at the top right in the NTD homepage by selecting the 9-square grid and selecting GTFS General Transit Feed Specification. So this will show the same information as the P50 form. It is just another way to access that same page with the GTFS links that your agency has submitted. All right, and as a review, your agency's GTFS link should include the following text files. The shape text file is optional but recommended. And then any additional files or extensions such as GTFS Real-Time or GTFS Flex are optional. The basic requirement is a static GTFS feed. As a reminder for your links, they can be hosted on different domains or by another agency as long as they are public and accessible. As a reminder, the National RTAP offers some really great resources on GTFS, including a GTFS builder and some live support sessions once a week. So we do encourage you to use these resources if you need assistance creating a GTFS feed, or if you have any questions about your agency's GTFS data. These resources are open to all agencies, not just rural agencies. Okay, moving on to the next form. This is the B15 Geographic Area Coverage Form for demand response modes. So beginning in report year 2023, agencies with demand response modes will need to complete one B15 form for each demand response mode and type of service combination. There will be 10 questions on the B15 form to complete. Question 1 on the B15 form, you will answer yes or no to whether or not your demand response service in question serves residents in another state besides your own. So this is a simple yes or no question that will inform the next question. So in question 2, you will then select the list of counties the demand response service area covers. So to start, you'll need to select the state, and then you'll be able to select the county. If you only serve your state where your agency is located and you selected that in question 1, The state list will only reflect the state you operate in. If you serve multiple states and you indicate it as such in question 1, then the list of all states will populate to allow you to select different states than the one you're located in. Once you've selected the state, then a list of state counties for the state you selected will populate. And then you're going to add the counties that you provide service to and repeat steps 2 and 3 until the list is complete with all of the counties that this demand response service provides service to. In question 3, you'll then indicate the census designated places, or CDPs, served within the counties you selected in question 2. You'll select the CDPs from the drop-down menu, and these will populate based on the counties you selected in question 2. The Census Bureau has an application called TigerWeb, which is an interactive map that allows you to view census designated places within your county or counties selected. So we encourage you to review that resource to get a visual of the census designated places. We will also have a crosswalk of census designated places to counties in each state. So that will be available as a resource on the NTD website at the beginning of the report year. Last piece of question 3, for any census designated place served, you'll need to indicate whether it is wholly served or partially served by selecting the choice in the drop-down menu. For question 4, you'll need to then indicate whether any portion of the demand response service is intended to meet ADA requirements for a fixed route system. You'll just select yes or no here. If you select yes, if any portion of your demand response service is intended to meet ADA requirements for a fixed route system, you will need to answer whether this service area is limited to ADA distance for your own NTD ID, or if it covers ADA distance for another service. So if it's only covering ADA requirements for your NTD ID, you will select yes to question 4. If it does not, and you cover other agencies' service areas, you will select no. If your demand response service covers ADA for another agency and you answered no to question 5, the next step will be to add the NTD IDs that this demand response covers ADA service for. You can do this by entering the NTD ID and clicking the search button, and the system will populate the NTD ID and reporter name for the ID that you searched. If that's correct, then you'll go ahead and select the checkbox next to the agency and then click the add button. You would repeat this step for any applicable NTD IDs. And if you need any help determining another agency's NTD ID 5-digit number, you can always contact your analyst and we'd be happy to help you out there. Question 6, moving on, is to indicate if your agency has different passenger eligibility requirements or different terms and conditions of service within your service area. Question 7, we ask that you select the days operated for the demand response service. Once you've selected the days operated by indicating the checkbox next to the appropriate days, you're going to click the Create Days of the Week button, which will populate the appropriate days for question 8. On question 8, after you click the Create Days of the Week, the system will populate the days you selected, and you'll need to indicate the time service begins and the time service ends for each day operated. If the service ends the next day after midnight, you will select that checkbox next to time service ends. Then the next piece of question 8 will be to indicate if the service on each day operated is open to 3 of the following categories: either complimentary paratransit passengers, a segment of passengers based on age or disability, or if it's open to the general population. So those 3 columns are yes or no selections for each day operated. Lastly, on the B15, you'll need to indicate the minimum advance reservation time for your service in question 9. So you can enter in a numerical value and then indicate whether that reflects days or hours. Question 10 is to report the fare charged for the service. In this field, please do not include any donations. The B15 data that you enter in report year 2023 will populate at the beginning of each report year moving forward. So the data you enter this year will pre-populate at the beginning of report year 2024, and you can just make edits as needed, but you will not have to fill out this form in its entirety every year unless you have a new service. Okay, next we're going to cover the SNS 60 safety data form. This is a new form for reduced reporters, including tribes, rural subrecipients, reduced asset reporters, and asset subrecipients. The previously collected safety data on the RR20 form for reduced reporters will now be replaced by this SNS 60 form. Full reporters are required to complete monthly and safety security reporting. The changes to the SNS data collection for full reporters are covered in the webinar linked here. So I would encourage you, if you're a full reporter, to contact your SNS analyst if you have any questions. The SNS 60 form that we're going to cover today is not for full reporters. The bipartisan infrastructure law requires that the NTD collect all assaults on transit workers, whether there is an injury or not. The respective SNS forms for full reporters were updated at the beginning of April 2023. This change is in effect for commuter rail operations as well, meaning that commuter rail, Alaska Railroad, and all hybrid rail modes will now complete a monthly SNS 50 summary form, in addition to the major events they already report. April 2023 was the effective date for data collection and will be the focus of validation efforts for full reporters. These changes will be in effect for our rural and reduced reporters and our asset reporters beginning in report year 2023 with the SNS 60, which we'll cover today. So that is an annual form. Our full reporters who complete monthly safety and security reporting, there was another specific webinar for that, and full reporters also have safety and security analysts assigned to them. So if you're a full reporter, I would encourage you, if you have any questions about these new requirements and how they relate to your existing safety and security forms, to contact your SNS analyst. So to review, there are 2 terms used to collect the assault type. These terms classify the assault as physical or non-physical. In a physical assault, the assailant makes physical contact with the worker and may use an object, weapon, or projectile to do so. Projectiles may include bullets, any liquid, the assailant's saliva, or other substance. In our non-physical assaults, there is no physical contact with the worker. Non-physical assaults could be things such as verbal threats, harassment, or interference with a worker's duties. Per the recent Federal Register notice, agencies must now provide additional detail on collisions and fatalities that result from impact with a bus. The SNS 60 form, in addition to collecting data on assaults, will also collect details on collisions and other major events. On the SNS 60 form, you should only report events that occur on transit right-of-way or infrastructure, at a transit revenue facility or maintenance facility, anything during a transit-related maintenance activity or an event involving a transit revenue vehicle and meeting a reporting threshold. You should exclude any events that occur at bus stops or bus shelters that are not on transit property unless someone is boarding or alighting a transit vehicle at the time. You should also exclude any events occurring off transit property where the affected persons come to rest on transit property. We're next going to cover the major event reporting thresholds and the non-major event reporting thresholds. Major event reporting thresholds include existing reportable events that reduced and rural reporters have reported in the past. This includes a fatality, including suicide, within 30 days of an event, one or more persons immediately transported for medical attention, estimated property damage equal to or exceeding $25,000, evacuations for life safety reasons, collisions involving transit revenue vehicles that require towing away from the scene of the transit vehicle or other non-transit vehicles. Our non-major event reporting thresholds include any assault on a transit worker in which there was no injury, meaning no transport away from the scene. Any assault on a transit worker involving an injury in which someone is transported away from the scene should always be classified as a major event. Non-major events include any single injury event that occurs from what we call other safety occurrences not otherwise classified. These include slips, trips, and falls or electric shock that require medical attention and transport of someone from the scene. Any multiple injury incidents are considered major events. If you have any single injury events that also meet another major event threshold mentioned on the previous slide, such as a collision, those would be considered a major event. Okay, so now we're going to go into what the SNS 60 form looks like and how to fill out the SNS 60 form. So to reiterate, the SNS 60 form is an annually reported form. It should capture the counts of the categories we're going to go over today for the entire reporting period. So for your entire fiscal year, you'll put the total counts for each category if applicable. So the first section on the SNS 60 form is the physical assault matrix. So this table requires you to indicate first the total number of major and non-major physical assaults for the reporting period, reported based on the location of the event. So you'll notice the location of the event are here in the columns. So you would report the count of major and non-major safety events across these different location categories, depending on where they took place. So the locations are in transit vehicle, in revenue facility, in a non-revenue facility, and in other. So these would be your count of major and non-major events related to physical assaults based on the location. So once you have filled out the total event counts, then you will report any related injuries and fatalities for those major or non-major events based on person category. So we have it broken down by operator, other transit worker, and other. This goes for both injuries and fatalities. So you would still report this based on location. So if you had operator injury and it took place in a transit vehicle, you would go ahead and put it under this column. Okay, so now we're going to review some examples of reportable items on the SNS 60 and how they would be reported on the form itself. So for scenario 1, we have a passenger who boards a bus but refused to pay the fare. They spit on the operator and the operator is not transported for medical attention. So based on this information, you would report one non-major event under the physical assault section. So this would go under the in-transit vehicle column for location. And since the operator was not transported from the scene, there are no reportable injuries and there are no fatalities mentioned in this scenario either. For scenario 2, we have 2 transit police officers who are involved in an altercation with a trespasser who is resisting arrest. The trespasser bites one officer and kicks another. Both officers are transported for medical attention. Based on this information, you would report one major event under the physical assault section and report 2 injuries under other transit workers. In terms of the location column for where you would place these counts, it would depend on where the event took place, which we don't have enough information here, but this would be something you can talk to your analyst about if you have any applicable situations or events that you want to discuss. We can help you to determine where to put them. Next, you're going to complete the non-physical assault section. So this is similar to the physical assault section in that we are first going to report the total count for the year for major and non-major events based on the location. So again, transit vehicle, revenue facility, non-revenue facility, and other. This is related again to non-physical assault, so meaning there was no contact made with the transit worker. So once you've reported the total number for the year for major and non-major non-physical assaults, then you would report any associated injuries or fatalities, again, broken down by person category. So operator, other transit worker, and other, which would be not a non-transit worker. Okay, so we have 2 examples for non-physical assaults. So for scenario 1, we have a passenger who boards the bus and refuses to pay the fare. The passenger spits on the operator, but in this scenario does not make contact with the operator. The operator denies medical attention and resumes their service. In this case, we would report one non-major event under the in-transit vehicle location on the SNS 60. For scenario 2, we have a train cleaner who accidentally brushed a passenger's foot. The passenger threatens the cleaner with bodily harm, and unfortunately, the cleaner is transported for medical attention due to distress. In these cases, you would report one major event under the non-physical section. You would report one injury for other transit worker since the train cleaner was transported for medical attention. In terms of which location to place the count under, it would depend on where the event took place. So we don't have enough information in this example, but again, if you have questions about which location to report any of your counts under, you can always contact your analyst to discuss. As a reminder, these should capture your annual totals for the year. So if you have any specific questions about how to capture that and how to fill out the matrices, please contact your analyst. We'll be working with the SNS team and the analysts who specialize in safety and security to make sure that the SNS 60 data is captured correctly. For any reported assault, you can also provide additional details in a text box on the SNS 60 form. This is optional, but you can include details on when the assault took place, the type of assault, or any other information you choose to report here. Lastly, on the SNS 60 form, you will need to report the count of all other reportable safety and security data. So you'll report the number of collisions by type. So this is the data related to collisions with pedestrians, collisions with vehicles, and collisions with other, which would be something like an animal. So this section will capture any non-assault events that are collisions meeting a threshold, other major events that we covered on the major event threshold slide, And then lastly, there is one field for any injuries related to non-major events. If you do report any major events under that first column, you would also include the count of any related injuries and fatalities in the other two columns if they are applicable to the event. Collisions must meet a major event threshold in order to be reportable. Any other major events would include anything that's not a collision but meets another major threshold, such as an evacuation. The last field to complete on that SNS 60 form is the total reportable injuries from non-major events. So this captures any single injury, other safety occurrences, such as slips, trips, or falls. So these injuries are only reportable if the person is transported for medical attention. If they're not transported for medical attention, then it is not reportable on the SNS 60. Okay, so that wraps up the SNS 60. Like I stated, I know that I'm sure we'll have a lot of questions about how to report and if things are reportable or not on this form. So I would encourage you, if you have any specific events that you'd like us to review, please go ahead and contact your NTD analyst so we can review that and let you know how that should be captured on the SNS 60 form. So the last new form we're going to cover is the WE20 Weekly Reference Reporting Form. So the Federal Register notice created a requirement for a monthly submission of weekly data for a sample group of agencies reporting to the NTD. The weekly data is intended to provide a timely snapshot of service and ridership at the national level. FTA selected a group of about 400 reporter modes to complete WE20 reporting. The agencies selected in the first WE20 sample group have already been notified. If you have not been contacted or you don't have WE20 forms in the reporting system, you are not selected for weekly reference reporting. If you're unsure or you want us to confirm that with you, please feel free to contact your analysts and we can confirm whether or not you are included in the sample. The sample group that was selected will submit the reference week data on a monthly basis for a 3-year period. Now we're going to cover what the WE20 form looks like and how to complete it if you have been selected for the reporting. On the NTD homepage, you'll select the weekly option. Then you'll select your NTD ID on the left next to the mode that you'd like to complete. If you have multiple modes selected, you'll see multiple entries in this weekly interface table. For non-vanpool modes, agencies must report a 5-day weekday total for vehicle revenue miles and unlinked passenger trips. And then you also have to provide a 2-day weekend total for vehicle revenue miles and unlinked passenger trips if you operate weekend service for the specific reference week. You'll see the current reference weeks open for data entry on your WE20 form when you open it. The reference week for each month will populate on the first of the month. For a list of due dates and reference weeks, you can refer to the monthly ridership and weekly reference manual linked earlier in the presentation, or you should have an email or two from your NTD analyst with a table of the reference weeks. For our vanpool modes, agencies have the choice. They may report vehicles operated in maximum service in lieu of vehicle revenue miles and unlinked passenger trips. You can optionally provide vehicle revenue mile and unlinked passenger trip data if it's available. Once you've entered your data for the WE20, you would select the Save and Validate button, and then you'll click Submit. Upon clicking Submit, the submission columns will update with the first and last submission and then who it was submitted by. For those of you who are working on WE20 currently. There is currently an issue with the first submission date, so we are aware of that and working with IT on resolving that issue. But the first submission date should remain, and the last submission date will update for any changes to the form. Okay, so that wraps up the new forms section. So I just want to reiterate that these forms will be reviewed in all upcoming webinars for our reduced reporters, our states, our subrecipients, and tribes, and in the NTD or NTI courses for NTD for urban reporters, we will also be covering these new forms. So hopefully you'll see this multiple times, and if you have any questions about new requirements, please feel free to reach out to your NTD assigned analyst, and if you're unsure of who that is, please contact the help desk and we will put you in touch with your analyst. So I'm going to turn it over to Lillian now to review some new fields and form enhancements for the year.
Thank you, Melissa. So good afternoon, everyone. My name is Lillian Pecoraro. I am an NTD validation analyst, and I will be talking about some new fields and system enhancements that you will see in the 2023 report. Okay, so one update that is specific to rural, tribal, and reduced asset reporters is the addition of the fuel type field on the A30 form. So if you are a full reporter or a reduced reporter, then you actually already report this field. This is not new for you. This is an existing requirement, but it is new for the rural, tribal, and reduced asset reporters. So for those reporters on the A30 form, you will now see the fuel type field for each individual fleet. So when you go into your A30, you will see that new field. So this is where you report the fuel type, examples, gasoline, compressed natural gas, diesel fuel, electric propulsion, etc. So this is what it looks like. So when you drill down to each individual fleet, you will see this fuel type drop down. So you will click the drop down and you'll be able to select the fuel type. So this is within each individual fleet. And one thing that if you do have a mode that has a large number of fleets, we recommend using the import-export function. So what you can do is you can export the A30 form, then you can go, you will have an Excel file, and then you can, within the Excel file, enter the fuel types for all of your fleets and then import it. So that might be better. That's something to consider if you do have a large number of fleets within a single A30 form. Okay, so another enhancement that we have added that we hope will be well received. We hope this will save a lot of time and lots of validation issues. We know this is something that is a headache for many people, causes lots of back and forth between the analyst and you all when you're filling out your report. So this is for urban reporters. So you currently fill out both miles this year and average lifetime miles. So starting with 2023, the average lifetime miles will now be auto-calculated once you have entered miles this year. So this is only for fleets that existed in the prior year and also had the same number of active vehicles. So what you will do is on your A30 form, you just have to enter miles this year. And once you click out of that field, that average lifetime miles will auto-calculate. So you don't have to go in and calculate it. You don't have to enter it. It will auto-calculate for you. And then you have the option to change it if you want. You know, if maybe there's an error from last year, you can go in and change it from what it was calculated to. Or if, you know, you have the same number of active vehicles, but, you know, they're not the exact vehicles that were active last year. So there might be a difference in the average lifetime miles. So you can go in and edit it, but you no longer need to enter that yourself. And I will also add that if you regularly use the import-export function, when you are importing your fleet data into the form, you only have to enter miles this year. So if you can just fill out miles this year in your Excel file. Once you go to import it, then the system will then calculate the average lifetime miles and give you that value. So you don't have to calculate it. Unless you want to, you can still continue to do so, but hopefully that will be a welcome update. Okay, another update we have is to the A90 form. So if you currently report the A90 form, what previously happened is that there's no constraints on the form, you're just able to save it blank. So that also did cause some back and forth. If you didn't fill it out, then your analyst comes back and says, fill this form out. We can't close out if it's blank. So now to prevent that back and forth from happening, we will have all of the fields required to be filled out. So you will either have to enter the target percentage value or the NA checkbox selection. So if you have missed any of those fields, if you haven't entered either the target or the NA checkbox, the form will prompt you with a message at the bottom saying you cannot save until you've entered this value. And so this is what it looks like. So you'll see this is the section 1 of the A90. Looks like this user, they filled out most of it, but they didn't fill out the articulated bus or the bus targets or NA. So they received a message. It just means that they have to fill those out before it will allow you to save. So just be careful because, if you go in and you enter a lot of data and you go to save, just make sure that there are no messages because it won't actually save your data if there are any fields missing. Okay, and one update we have made to the A15 form is to add the longitude and latitude search. So currently on the A15 form, we have you have the ability to enter the address individually. So you would enter the street, the city, the state, and the zip, or you could also enter the longitude and latitude. So this is currently for any existing facility, but we are going to be adding this for new facilities soon. So you will click on that pencil icon to update the address or latitude and longitude. So it'll take you to the edit page, and then once you scroll down to the address and latitude longitude section, what you can do now is you can either search by address or search by latitude and longitude. So if you search by address, what you can do is if you already have something there, you delete it out, you can start typing the address, and then it will search through the valid addresses, and hopefully you'll be able to find the exact address there. Once you continue typing, you might need to enter both the street and the city before you get the correct one. There's the same street in multiple cities. But then once you select one from the dropdown, it will then auto-populate the street, city, state, and zip fields. And then it will also auto-populate the latitude and longitude. So you just need to search there to get all of that data at once. But if you have the latitude and longitude instead, or if you don't have a street address, if it's like a cross street or a mile marker, then you can search by the latitude and longitude. So what you would do is it's the same kind of process, except you would just enter the latitude and longitude, and then it would search for the address and then pull in the address in those fields. Okay, another new requirement for 2023 is located on the P10 form. So we are now requiring an emergency contact to be reported. So this is a person. It does not have to be an already existing NTD user, but ideally it's an individual affiliated with emergency preparedness or response functions. Again, it has to be a person. It can't just be an office. And this is the person that FTA will use to facilitate communication between FTA and the reporter during emergencies. So if you are a state DOT, this will be a contact at the subrecipient level. So the requirement for 2023 is just to go in and update your P10 and add the emergency contact. And then going forward, so with your, not the current kickoff cycle, but the next kickoff cycle. So if you are an urban reporter, this will be with your 2025 kickoff. If you're a state reporter, this will be with your 2024 kickoff. There will be a new page on the kickoff where you will certify that the emergency contact is correct, or you'll also be able to update it if it's no longer correct. So this is what it will look like and how you get there. So you go to your profile page within the NTD reporting system. You will go to related actions, and then you click on view and manage basic information. So there's other sections on the P10, there's address, things like that, but you will scroll to the emergency contact section. And then there you will enter the name, the email, and the phone number. Again, this is an actual person, so you'll have the person's name, the person's email, and their phone number.
All right, thank you, Lillian. So that wraps up our presentation for today. So here's the information for the help desk, my contact information and Lillian's as well, if you have any questions about today's presentation. And then we also have Chelsea Champlin, the program manager for NTD at FTA. Her contact information is here as well. So thank you everyone for listening. I know it was a lot of information, but I just want to reiterate again, this will be covered in all of the reporter specific webinars and NTI courses for this year. So we're going to open it up to questions. I saw there were a lot of great questions while I was presenting. So Lori, I think we're ready to go through questions since we have a little bit of time here.
Okay, yeah, we have a bunch of time. I guess what I'll do is, it looks like right now there's 25 open questions. I'll start, I'll scroll up to the top and we'll just go through them. Does that sound okay?
That sounds perfect.
Okay, so the first question from a while ago asks, is this GTFS link as of a snapshot in time? And that was from early on, so it's probably from the beginning.
Yeah, so I think Lillian touched on this in another answer related to agencies that may be updating their GTFS links, throughout the year. So you can submit it for your GTFS link as of the current time. When you submit it, it can be current at that point in time. We don't require that you do it as of your fiscal year end. It's just whatever's current at the time of submission. You can update it at any time if there are changes, but you don't have to notify us if you update it. Moving forward in report year 2024, we will have a new section of the CEO certification, just so agencies can certify that their GTFS links are up to date as of their NTD report for that year. But that's the only check-in we will do in 2024 and forward. So you're welcome to update them at any time, but it doesn't have to be as of like fiscal year end or anything like that.
Great. The next question is from Rachel. Will there be forms for download that reflect these new questions to send to agencies?
Sure. So I don't know if that's which form that's specific to, but once the system is open, if there's an import-export function, you can export the form from the NTD reporting system.
Let's hope that answers the question. Dawn asked, we serve one county, but cross over county lines for connection with other agencies to transfer ADA passengers and to some selected drop-off locations. What would be partially served?
Sure. So if you're, you'll select partially or wholly served dependent on the census designated place. So I would encourage you to take a look at where those are. And if you are wholly or partially serving the areas where you're going for transfers or selecting or selective drop-off locations, that may be partially served if you're not providing service to the whole census designated place. But I think it would depend on, if you take a look at the map of the county you're looking at and the number of census designated places within it. You can select partially if you wouldn't serve that whole area.
Great.
I hope that helps.
We will find out. Next question is from Pedro. What about commingling of trips? Not necessarily using a fixed route. Page 30 of your slides to refer back.
Sure, page 30. Let me see which form that was in reference to. Okay, for I'm assuming this is related to ADA. So this is just if any portion of your demand response service is intended to meet ADA. There may be other portions of your service that are not meant to serve ADA requirements or to cover ADA requirements. If that's the case, you know, if there's a portion of it, you'll select yes. If the demand response service in question is not meant to meet ADA requirements at all, then you can select no. So that will vary depending on what type of services your agency provides. But if any portion of the demand response mode you're filling the B15 form out for is intended to meet ADA requirements, you should select yes to question 4.
Great. Next up from Robert. What do we put in for when service begins or ends if that changes depending on times of year? And then he says the maximum.
Yeah, I would put in the maximum time for time service begins and ends. I know sometimes agencies run different types of service throughout the year, so it would be you know, your longest service of the day of the year.
Next from Victoria. What if we have different zones for DR that have different fare requirements?
That's a great question. So we are currently discussing that with FTA at the NTD program office to get clarification on what question 10 should capture. So we should have that information soon and are hoping to put a tooltip next to that question in the B15 form to let agencies know which fare it should capture. Because I understand demand response modes have fares that may vary depending on zones or passengers. So more information to come on that very soon.
Cool. From Jeff, for the B15 about days and times of service, we change depending on the time of year. For example, we do not run weekends during the summer and our night service ends sooner in the summer. How do we fill out the B15 with varying days and times?
Sure. So I think this is similar to the question we answered. So if it varies, I would put your maximum. So at your busiest time, you know, when you have the longest amount of service or days operated, have that reflected on the B15 form.
And from Cheryl, again, about the B15 form, we charge 2 different fares. I guess these are all similar questions, depending on if they are ADA or not, and which one should they report?
Yep, so more information to come on that. We're still getting clarification on what question 10 should reflect in terms of which type of fare you should report. So more to come on that. And like I said, we hope to put a little tooltip information pop up on that form, on that question on the form, so it's clear when you fill it out.
So I think the next 2 questions are also similar about B15. This one's specifically question 14. We have different fares dependent upon distance. How do we communicate this? And then, oh wait, B15. Okay, wait. We'll just stop there for that one right now. Sorry.
No, that's okay. Yeah, I think this one is still
similar,
related.
Right?
Yeah, still related. So I think it would depend on what instruction we get and we'll put on the form. So to be determined, but we'll get that information clarified soon.
Great. This is from Anonymous. So it says demand response ADA paratransit typically involves transfer points where one agency's service area ends and another agency's begins. Should this be considered as operating service within the service area or of the other agency?
Sure, so that's a good question. I think if your service area, if your ADA service is meant to provide service for another agency's area, then you would, I'm assuming this is related to question 5, then yes. But if it's not, if you just happen to go into another agency's service area, then that would be no to question 5.
Okay. Another B15 question. Will the B15 be added to the forms library on NTD's website? If so, when? I think you touched on that already, but you don't, maybe you didn't. This impacts state reporters who need to collect the information from subrecipients.
Sure. So the B15 forms will be available in NTD when the database opens. So mid to late September is when we're hoping to. We don't have a specific date at this time. So those will be available. Your analyst will contact you once it's available for data entry if you're an October reporter. So the information for the forms will be there once it opens. The questions can be found in the Federal Register notice and also in this presentation and the one from May as well related to the B15 questions.
Great. They're anonymous. May you address if we should report expired funds as a form of annual revenue? It is not associated with trips, but stale cash that passes through customers' accounts due to inactivity of 5 or more years.
Sure. So that would depend on whether or not you're a full reporter or a reduced reporter in terms of whether you report funds earned. So I would contact your NTD analyst to discuss that. But generally, if you have any funds earned during the fiscal year, you would report those. But that is also if you're a full reporter. So if you're a reduced reporter, we only collect funds expended. So that would depend on whether or not they've been expended.
Okay, next question is from VJ. Which mode should we report for section 5310 subrecipients trips?
Sure. So I think we need a little bit more information there on the type of service and whether or not this will be, if it's a demand response service or a bus service. So I would recommend contacting your analyst to determine which mode should be reported on your NTD report. So 5310, is typically demand response, but just to ensure we have that correct, I would just recommend giving an overview of the services to your NTD analyst so we can confirm that mode and type of service.
Simone's question, for the contact person to use the office phone number or their cell phone, I'm not sure. Was there?
Sure.
Yeah.
Yep, I think that was for the emergency contact. So I would use their work phone number, whatever that may be. If that's an office or a work cell phone, I would say that's at the discretion of the agency. A personal cell phone is not a requirement for the emergency contact field.
Okay, so office phone then.
Yes.
That question's for me. I'll answer that. Melissa Metz is asking if there's a broken link. It looks like it's the 2023 monthly ridership and weekly reference policy manual. Was that linked?
Yes, that was on the resources page.
Yeah, I don't, maybe it doesn't.
Yeah, apologize for that.
No, well, it might, Melissa, if you're still on here, if you're trying to access it from the PowerPoint, it might not be hyperlinked, in which case you can copy and paste the text into the browser. I don't know if you did that or if it's just not working. So I need more information actually.
Yeah, I just sent the link. I just sent the link. That should hopefully work. It's not, it's on the NTD website under manuals. So if you need any help with that, contact your analyst and we'll be happy to point you to that.
Okay, the next question I was going to just type an answer, but since we're still on here, someone asks, will they be able to download the transcript of the Q&A? And my answer to that for anyone else who's interested is that the answers that were typed will be available in a report after the Zoom in an Excel file that I should be able to link to post a link in the description of the video of this session that is going on our YouTube page. Otherwise, this whole portion of the Q&A will be included in the video. So if you're particularly interested in hearing part of this again, just, fast forward the video to the end till you find approximately where you want to listen. So I answered that live. Next, also from Anonymous. Well, this is about, okay, well, I'll just read it. In future webinars, also, I don't know if everybody can hear this bird outside my window, but it's really irritating and I apologize. In future webinars, info like this needs to be conveyed much earlier. Our trade has 60+ reporters too. We have about 2 weeks to prepare our agencies for these new questions, collect the data, and validate the data by October 31st. At the same time, we're collecting milestones and annual progress reports. Agencies typically don't have their audits done during data collection period either, so everything is really compressed and challenging. This is obviously speaks to the turnaround time for when entering the information is open. I'm not sure if there's anything that you can do, but
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I definitely understand the concern and appreciate the feedback. If you have concerns, I would encourage you to reach out to your analyst. In terms of new requirements, these are published in the Federal Register notice, proposed for comment. So it is a longer process in terms of determining, what the final requirements will be. And then, over the summer, getting those into the reporting system. So we always aim to have them ready as soon as possible. I would encourage you to attend any Federal Register notice related webinars that will at least cover the topics. I know they don't always cover what the form will look like today's webinar did. So, if there's anything we can help with, I would encourage you to talk to your NTD analyst. We understand this is the first year this information is required. If there's anything we can do to help, please feel free to reach out.
Okay. Sorry, I was answering a question in the chat box, but I also will say that again, if anybody wants access to the Q&A, the Excel sheet version with the typed answers, I will make that shareable in the description of the video. And there's a lot of people on here, so it may take a while, but if you want a copy, request it from me and I will email you the link. But you might want to wait for the survey email before you do that, because I will, as promised, place it in there. Next question. On the funding portion, are administrative expenses lumped in with the operating expenses? There's only operating and capital on the NTD form.
Sure. So administrative expenses are considered operating expenses for the NTD.
Another B15, that seems to be a popular question subject. On B15, question 4 to 5 is to form SSW. I'm not really sure what that means.
Sure. So yeah, I'm not sure if that is asking if the B15 is related to or is applicable to small systems waivers or reduced reporters, but the answer is yes. It is applicable if you operate in demand response mode.
Okay. Unfortunately, Gary said they couldn't hear it until it was pointed out, but I'm not sure what that's in reference to. So Gary, if you're still there and want to elaborate, that would be cool. Jennifer's thanking us. And Karen wants to know when the video will be available. I have to give it a light edit and get it posted, and we're approaching a holiday weekend. So I'm thinking, and there's more webinar next week, probably mid to late next week, Karen. Hopefully that works for you. There was a thank you. So that's all of the open questions. We still have a little bit of time if anyone out there still has additional questions for the chat box. We'll just sit and wait a minute, see if anything pops up. I see Jeanette Stumbow has a hand raised. I don't know if you were just testing out that feature or you actually have a question. Well, I don't see any more questions coming in, and the attendee number is declined. Oh, there's a few more coming in. Karen wants to know if the B15 is for demand response only, yes or no?
Yes, that's correct. For demand response modes only.
And Sean says, do we need to provide P50 for demand response as well as DO modes?
No, so the P50 for GTFS feeds is only for fixed route modes. Demand response is not considered a fixed route mode. Directly operated modes, that's a type of service, so it would depend on the mode that you directly operate on whether or not it's required on the P50.
Okay. Next question. We only serve people in our county, but we take them to all contiguous counties. How do we report this?
Sure. So on the B15 form, if you were selecting that, you would select the counties that you provide pickup for residents for new trip origination. So if that's only your county, then you would include that there in question 2.
Okay. If different agencies serve the same county, but on different days, is that a partial service?
So the wholly and partially served selection is for census designated places, but that should be related to the geographic service area, not related to how many days you provide service there. So if you provide service wholly to that area, but only on different days, it would still be wholly served, because we're looking more at the actual service area.
Amy wants to know when the tribal reporter session will be held. Amy, there's one scheduled for October 3rd, and I'm going to paste a link in the box to our entire schedule of courses and webinars that you can take a look at. I'm putting that in there right now. I didn't preface it with anything. I just sort of pasted the link, but that's what that is. So October 3rd, Amy, and you can register for that on the webinars are at the bottom. If you scroll down on the link I sent, you can register for that. And that's it for right now. Should we wait a little bit longer or wrap it up?
I'm happy to wait a couple more minutes. Thank
Okay.
you, everyone. Appreciate it.
Okay, we'll sit here quietly waiting for people to type. I know silence is awkward sometimes, but we'll just give everyone a chance. Slow typers. We got you. Yes, Karen, silence can be golden. Someone just asked if I could send the link to replay the recording. Not until after I edit it and post it on our YouTube, which again, probably towards the second half of next week. Okay. Diana says, I'm brand new to NTD reporting. Is there any assistance provided for persons like me?
Sure. So we have, depending on your reporter type, if you are a reduced reporter, state DOT reporter, or a tribe, we have webinars coming up. And if you're an urban full reporter, there are NTI courses that you can sign up for. So those are longer, held virtually still, but they are a little bit longer and more in depth, since full reporting requires more forms, more details. So you can check out the NTD trainings and conferences page linked on one of the resources slides, and that should provide you with some options. So if you need any help finding that, you can always contact your analyst too, and we can point you to the correct webinar or training for your reporter type.
Okay. Martin wants to know when the 2023 policy guide is expected.
Sure, that should be out mid to late September as well.
And it looks like Sean has a follow-up from his previous question. Their previous question, since I don't know your gender, I'm sorry, still trying to be careful and cautious with that. We would then also need P50 for the IPDO, I know that is a unique mode, and I don't think we currently have that available, so just want to be clear.
Sure, Sean, that's a great question. So that is considered a fixed route mode since it is technically rail. But so my answer is yes. But I will also just double check on that. So if you wouldn't mind chatting me your agency ID, name and ID, I can follow up with you on that just to double check, since that is a more unique mode to the NTD.
Okay. So Diana, who is new to reporting, says thanks, and that they've been doing the courses, but they're a bit nervous about this upcoming annual reporting season and wondered if there was anything more hands-on than what you previously described.
Sure. So that's the extent of the trainings that we have. But I would encourage you to set up a call with your NTD analyst if you have any questions or want to walk through any of the forms. You should be, if you're an urban reporter or a tribal reporter, you'll be assigned an NTD analyst to work with directly. So we'll be that individual will be reviewing your report, validating it for the year. So they're there if you have any questions, email or phone. If you need to set up a call, we're happy to do that with you. Whoever your assigned analyst is, if you need any help figuring out who that is, we can figure that out for you too.
Great. So that was the last open question in the Q&A box. I noticed that Amy Hill put something in the chat that I think we should maybe address. It says, there seems to be a lot of scenarios for the assault situations. That is very confusing. And will there be more sessions for that specific section?
Sure, that's a great question. So we don't have any current webinars planned for specific safety and security reporting for reduced reporters or rural reporters. But they will be covering the SNS 60 again in the specific reporter type webinars. So they'll go over what I went over today. But the biggest thing I could recommend for our reduced reporters with the SNS 60 is if you have any questions or events you think may be reportable, send a quick overview to your analyst and we can take a look at that and walk you through why it is or is not reportable and which category on the form it would fall under if it is reportable.
Awesome. So, oh, Amy said thank you in the chat. That is it for the open questions. And we do have a few more minutes, 9 minutes to be exact. So. Well, maybe I'll wrap it up. Oh, no. Suggestion for the new reporter from Tracy, read the policy manual, even if it is last year's, and understand the USOA. That's great. Thank you, Tracy. Okay. Oh, Barbara coming in under the wire. If we don't have any transit employees, do we need to report on the SNS 60?
Sure. So I'm not quite sure if I have enough information to answer that. Whether or not your agency operates service. So any contractors or volunteers that are working on behalf of the transit agency would be considered transit employees. So I'm not sure if it's a situation with volunteers possibly, or if you don't provide transit service. I see you're from an MPO. So if you are reporting service to the NTD, it's likely you'll have an SNS 60 if you're a reduced reporter or rural reporter. And then our asset recipients and reduced reporters, reduced asset reporters also have to fill out that form. Strictly van pool. Okay. So the SNS 60 would still have information on other reportable events. So, outside of physical and non-physical assaults in that bottom section. So if you have any reportable safety events that apply there, you should include those. If you don't have anyone that would be considered a transit employee, so again, anyone, contractor or volunteer on behalf of the agency, then you just wouldn't report anything under the assault section of the SNS 60. But you still could have, you know, events related to non-assault safety and security data.
And I pasted the link to NTI's YouTube page in the chat box. And that's where you will be able to find this recording, and all of the previous ones are on there as well. I'm going to wrap it up, I think.
Sure. Thank you,
Okay.
everyone.
Thank you, everybody. As I mentioned, for those of you still here, you will be getting an email with a survey evaluation. Please take a couple of minutes. Your feedback is very important to us. And as promised, I will also link to the Q&A document report, where you will get the written answers. The spoken answers, you'll have to wait for the end of the video. Thank you so much, Melissa and Lillian. And I hope everyone has an awesome long holiday weekend coming up. Enjoy the end of summer blowout, and I'll see those of you participating next week on our next webinar.
Thanks, Lori. Thank you, everyone, for joining. Have a great afternoon.
Bye.